When you use your writing to mention the name of a researcher, author, or thinker, we call this a signal phrase. When you write a signal phrase, you might say, according to Jones, or research findings by Sung and Winstrom confirm that blah, 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 or Nizam, on the other hand, suggests that. These phrases can really help to set up a summary or a paraphrase or a quotation. They also can work together with citations, offering a way to give credit to a source that you explore deeply without necessarily using dozens of footnotes or brackets. Students sometimes worry that they have to cite every single sentence in a paragraph if they're exploring someone else's work. But one common strategy is to cite a source the first time it's introduced, and thereafter, every time a direct quotation or particular point is discussed. Yet, signal phrases can often suffice for those in-between elaborating sentences because they clearly and fairly suggest to the reader that you're still dealing with the just introduced or just cited source material. So in context, signal phrases let you continue giving credit. Here's an example of how you might use signal phrases to mention sources in your scholarly writing. Quotation fragments are quotations of short phrases rather than whole sentences. You can use quotation fragments to borrow key terms or descriptions, arguments or phrasings, and use them in your own original sentence while still giving fair credit through citation and quotation. Quotation fragments are great when you want to try summarizing or paraphrasing, but when a small portion of your source is just so well phrased that you can't find any other way to rewrite what they've said. A lot of the time, when students land in one of those gray areas of plagiarism, it's because they've attempted to paraphrase, but ended up using too much verbatim language by mistake along the way, without proper quotation marks. You can avoid this problem by just putting the relevant small portions of borrowed text into quotation marks. That way, those few phrases could be used legitimately as cited quotation fragments incorporated into your larger sentence or paragraph, or summarized a work in your own words. Here's an example of how you might use quotation fragments to select small portions of text to quote in your scholarly writing. Block quotations are quotations that are formatted differently when used in writing because they're longer than usual. When you compose a block quotation, you usually squeeze the margins to make the text line up on both sides, and sometimes squish the line spacing. Typically, block quotes don't need quotation marks, but they always need a citation. The details on how to do this will depend on your chosen citation style, but the main point is to make your long quotes stand out clearly from your paragraphs by making it look starkly different and, well, blocky. Use this block style whenever the quotation takes up more than about 2 or 3 lines of your own writing. Unless you're doing this sort of project where examining long selections of text is appropriate, it's usually recommended to use long quotations sparsely. But used in moderation, block quotations are a great tool for incorporating and using longer quotations and for diversifying your writing style. Here's an example of how you might use block quotations to visually highlight a longer quote in your scholarly writing. Square brackets allow you to flag changes that you have made to a quotation in order to make your quotations work well within your own project. You can use square brackets to make minor changes in wording or capitalization in order to improve the clarity, grammar, or flow of your quotation. For example, let's imagine that your quotation includes the word they, but doesn't make it clear who they are. Maybe it was made clear in an earlier sentence that you're not quoting. Instead of leaving that confusing they in there, it's completely fair and appropriate for you to delete the word they and put the specific word or name that explains who they are. You then flag to your readers that you've made this change by putting the word in square brackets. In another example, let's imagine that you want to compose a hybrid quotation where the first part of your sentence is your writing and it flows into the quotation. But maybe you want to use the beginning of a sentence from your source in the middle of a sentence. You can change the capitalization, shifting to either lowercase or uppercase as appropriate, as long as you indicate the change by putting square brackets around the changed letter. Here's an example of how you might use square brackets to make transparent editorial changes to a quotation. Ellipsis is the proper name for the good old-fashioned ... You make an ellipsis by stringing 3 periods together. Ellipses have many uses. When quoting someone else's writing, ellipses are used to show that something has been purposefully left out. For example, if you have a long passage that you want to quote, but the middle sort of rambles and all you really need is the beginning and end, you can omit the middle part and indicate the omission fairly with an ellipsis. Some style guides recommend using square brackets around ellipses, so consult your chosen guide to see if that's necessary. Here's an example of how you might use an ellipsis to trim down excessive wording from a quotation.